Morning, Westside. How we doing? Hey, there's a verb that I've been using more and more often these days. I'm not sure when I started increasing the usage, but I'm just hearing myself use it more and more in my thoughts and my prayers and my conversations with people. The verb is shape, to shape something, as in the way that water and ice might shape a landscape if you give it enough time, and the way that an artist might shape a clump of clay into something. And I'm just finding myself using that word more and more often. It might be because I'm getting a little older and my shape is changing a little bit against my will. Might be because I've got 3 girls, I'm raising these 3 daughters, and it's just obvious their minds and their hearts and their characters are developing, they're growing, they are being shaped in some small way by every single one of my actions and reactions. And I'm just increasingly aware of that. I'm increasingly aware and maybe even terrified about the forces that are awaiting my girls outside of my control, waiting to shape them and maybe even already shaping them. Or maybe because I've just noticed ways in which I have been shaped. My mind, my character, my heart, what I behave out of, this me is being shaped by the media I ingest, by the algorithmic forces designed to profit from my outrage, from whatever gets me riled up and angry at somebody, exploitative forces that do not seem to have our best interests in mind. These are shaping us every day, and I'm just more and more aware of that. Maybe it's because it's just obvious that our world is being shaped. Our world has been shaped. I mean, after a couple years of 2020, you stop and you look back, and it's just painfully clear. You're like, whoa, we have been reshaped into a people we were not before. And, what am I? What are we allowing, inviting into our lives to shape us? And are those things shaping me into the person that I really want to be, the person I want my kids to be, the people around me to be, you, my church family to be? See, for me to answer that question, I got to get really clear on what shape I wish to take. Like when all this is over, what do I want my life, my heart, my character, the me to look like? What is the ideal shape of my life and the way to live it? Who is it? Who has lived this life in such a perfect way that he is worthy of total emulation? Who is the ideal human being? And by aiming my life at him, I might become more fully myself, my truest self. Is it that guy? I mean, I'm kind of already like that guy if I just didn't have these sleeves on, kind of covering up my true self at the moment. Maybe it's this next guy. Looks like he's made at least a few good decisions in his life. I don't know. Or maybe this last guy. Family guy, right? Looks like he's doing something right. Got it all together in this picture, maybe. Who's actually got it all together? Can you show me that guy? Can you show me the guy who's got it all together? Because if you can show me, I'm going to follow him. I will aim my life at that guy. Well, hey, our worship center space is about to change its shape here in a couple weeks. December 5th, grand opening of our new worship center. I hope you're excited about that. Hope you're planning to be here for that. There will be notably more seating capacity because we are a church that is always going to have our eye on the people who are not here yet, and we are serious about making room for them. And you already know this. Anytime an organization of any kind makes a change, especially a big change, it's got to ask the question of whether or not this change is consistent, if it's aligned with the mission, the purpose, the central purpose of the organization. So, yeah, what is Westside's central purpose? What is our church's mission? Maybe you've heard us say this before, that our mission, our purpose is to connect everyone to Jesus and his mission. And maybe you've noticed that we tend to put that word everyone in all caps. That's because that's a very precious word to us. See, we want to be a church that is known in our community as a church that is for everyone. You might hear us say that, for everyone. Now, I want to be clear, that could mean a couple different things, and we only mean one of the two. Like when we say for everyone, we do not mean that in the sense of like a product that might be advertised for everyone. No, we rather mean that in the way that like a coach of a team is for every player on his or her team, or a sports fan is for every player on their favorite team, right? To be clear, we are not trying to be popular with everyone. We're never trying to be a church that everyone likes, a church that offers what everyone wants. I mean, it'd be fine with us if our style appealed to everyone, but that's not realistic, and it's certainly not what we're aiming for. Popularity is never our goal. People are, always. People's lives will always be our goal. But, meanwhile, we live in a world whose tribes are more often known for what they are against than what they're for. And maybe your church experience in the past has been similar to that. Maybe you feel like the churches that you've been a part of have been clearer about what they're against than what they're for. And we don't want to be like that. We want to be known for what we are for and who we are for, not for what we're against. And make no mistake, we are for everyone. We want the best for everyone. We are determined to love everyone, even those who have nothing but contempt for us, because that is precisely the kind of God that we serve and worship. That is how our God is. Our fundamental belief is that He loves every single human being, every individual, with a profound and self-sacrificial love. God loves everyone. Does that mean He loves everything? Does that mean He loves every behavior, every way of thinking? No, goodness no. Like how could He possibly? It's precisely because He loves every person that He can't possibly love every destructive and self-destructive element or behavior we can come up with, every self-destructive behavior in a person's life, right? He is for you, which means He is absolutely not for everything you do. Just like you are for yourself, but you are not for everything that you do. Because He is for everyone who thinks, He can't possibly be for every way of thinking. He is for everyone who behaves, and therefore He cannot be for every way of behaving. Now, that might be confusing to some, maybe just because our world is so often blurring the lines between our identities, who we are, and our behaviors, what we do, what we think, what we feel. As if, you don't love me if you don't love my behavior. Huh? As if there's no difference between who we are and what we do, think, and feel. No, like that's not how we think. Like the whole Christian hope is based on this distinction between who we are and what we do. Our whole hope is in a God who distinguishes our identity from our behaviors, what we have done. Our central hope is that God has already, in part, and will someday, in totality, cleanse our sinful behaviors and desires cleanse our depraved ways of thinking and behaving from our identities, who we are. Thank goodness. God sees through the stupid things I've done and said and thought. He sees through our destructive and self-sabotaging ways of thinking and behaving. He sees through all that garbage to that powerless child underneath it all. That's the one He loves. That is the one He died to save. So if you ever catch yourself thinking or saying, well, if they don't love me, or if they don't love what I think or what I do, then they can't love me. If you ever catch yourself thinking that, just no. You're operating on a kind of silly, sloppy, broken way of thinking about yourself. Because you are more than the sum of everything you've ever thought, felt, and done. You are more than that. And that is a tremendously good thing for you and for what we call everyone. So heads up, Westside, as we move into a new space, we are absolutely doubling down on our mission to connect everyone to Jesus and his mission. So yeah, why is that our mission? Why are those the words that we chose as our purpose, as our central purpose? Why is this church all about connecting everyone to Jesus? Well, there's a lot of different ways to answer that. But the short answer, the simplest answer is because Jesus said so. Like that's kind of the concise one you could take home with you. Let me show you what I mean. It's at the end of the Gospel of Matthew. Matthew's the first book in the New Testament. It's the first of 4 Gospels, 4 books that tell the story of Jesus' life, his teachings, his miracles, his death, his resurrection. And we are at the very end of the book of Matthew, at the final chapter, the final scene, actually. So we're picking up the story after all of Jesus' teachings, after his miracles, after his crucifixion, and now finally after his resurrection from the dead. Now, Jesus was crucified and raised from the dead around Jerusalem, in Jerusalem. And this resurrected Jesus has sent word to his disciples, that is his closest followers, to meet him on a mountaintop in Galilee. That's a part of the country that was way north of Jerusalem. And it's where Jesus had started his ministry. So he probably sees this Galilee as the perfect place, not just to wrap it all up, but actually to start something new. It is the end of Jesus' earthly ministry, where he was present in his body, walking around in a body like yours and mine. And it's not just the end, it's also the start of a new era of Jesus' ministry, where he is present in his Spirit, who dwells in the lives of his followers, called his church community. You know how we often remind you or maybe tell you that this local church, Westside, is 120 years old? That's true. That's accurate. It's pretty awesome. And it is also very true to say that this church right here, the one that you're sitting in, started 2,000 years ago on a mountaintop in Galilee. Here's the scene right here. In Matthew 28, it says, "Then the 11 disciples went to Galilee, to the mountain where Jesus had told them to go. When they saw him, they worshiped him, but some doubted." Man, what a picture of the church community right here in this scene. I mean, if you freeze frame, back to the present, if you freeze frame the global church in the present, just boom, pause, and then you rewind 2,000 years, and you stop it right here on this Matthew 28 moment in history, you see a church of 11. 11. That's not even an even number. 12, is at least divisible by 2 and 3 and 4. It's like nice and round and perfect. It's complete. 12 is complete. 11 is uncomfortably incomplete. It always has an empty seat with it. 11 is the shape of a church that always has room for at least one more. And Matthew knows what he's doing here, because he knows he can't say 11 disciples without triggering the memory of what was, not long ago, that 12th disciple, Judas, who just a few days before this moment realized that he had betrayed human history's only innocent man and handed him over to be crucified for 30 pieces of silver. And when he realized that, he took his life. It's dark. So this church of 11 is not just a church that's like ready to grow. This church is limping, painfully aware of its fallibility, its susceptibility to make mistakes, its vulnerability to evil. So weak and feeble, like a bruised reed, so easily crushed, like a candle, so easily blown out. That's the church that is here before the resurrected Jesus who is standing on this mountain. And Matthew says all 11 worshiped him. I think that probably means they're on their knees, they're on their faces on the ground, bowing before him in worship. But some doubted. Doubt is present here in this church. Man, is that not beautifully honest? And you gotta kind of understand the situation here that these guys are in. This was like nothing they had ever seen before. The resurrected Jesus? Could they really believe what their empirical senses were telling their brains? This was the guy. This was the body. There is scars. This was the body that was deader than a doornail 3 days ago. So yeah, it's going to take a little time to wrap your brain around what is going on here. And if you're wondering about that word doubt, and you're wondering, wait, how is it that doubt can coexist with worship? Well, if you're confused by that, you probably have a misunderstanding of doubt and its ability to coexist with a mature faith, a growing faith, and a ruthless trust. You might think of faith and doubt as enemies, as opposites. They are not opposites. Certainty is the opposite of faith, not doubt. See, doubt and trust go together, just like fear and courage go together. Have you noticed this? Courage is not being fearless. Courage looks like rather a person who is taking a step forward into danger despite a fear that is in the heart. A courageous person says, I am afraid, but I will not let my fear define my actions. I will not live out of my fear. I will live out of courage, and I'll move toward this right thing to do. Likewise, a faithful person says, yeah, I've got my doubts, but they will not define me. I will not live those doubts out. Am I certain that God will rescue me from pain? No. But even if he doesn't, I will still obey him. That's what faithful looks like. That's what worship looks like. See, trust looks like someone, it looks like someone in our story here, right? Like worshiping the resurrected Jesus in that brutal tension between this reality that I am familiar with and that higher, nobler reality that is just within my reach. A faithful church is not a church that's chock full of certainty. No. Westside, may this always be a church where there is room for doubt. May there always be room for doubt in this faithful church, because that's the kind of church that Jesus uses to change the world. So there the 11 are, knees and faces to the ground, scared like never before, uncertain like never before about what's going on and what's about to happen. And Jesus doesn't exercise the fear and doubt. He doesn't cast it out. He quietly overlooks it. And the text says he moves toward them and gives them one final command. It says, then Jesus came to them, stepped toward them, and said, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I am with you always to the very end of the age. Boom. That is a big line right there, right? As if Matthew turned up his amplifier all the way for this last line of the book, this last line from Jesus. See, Jesus at this point has given a lot of commands to his disciples, but this one is the resurrected Jesus giving one final command before his departure, and it's a big one. Did you hear all the alls in there? Like if you saw the original Greek text, it's like all authority, all nations, all my commands, all of your days till the very end of time, I will be with you. Whew. It's big, man. And as weighty and as universal and far-reaching these 40 words are, there's actually only one imperative in the whole bit. In the original Greek grammar, that command to make disciples is the only imperative. It's the only command word in this whole passage. As if all the other words here, as heavy as they are, as if they are all supporting that command, explaining it. It literally reads, disciple all the nations. That verb, disciple, make disciples. Disciple all the nations. All nations being, all ethnicities, all people groups, all tribes on the planet. Because, as the Old Testament prophets said, it is too small of a thing for only one nation, only one people group to know and serve this God. That is too small a thing. That would be inappropriate, like profane. As if, a king comes to town and only one family comes out to greet him and welcome him. Like, that would be profane. And here we're talking about the God of the universe, the king of creation. How profane it would be for only one people group to recognize him as such. So yeah, disciple the nations, he says. You ever wonder why, this church makes a big deal about connecting everyone to Jesus? This line is the reason. You ever wonder why churches make a big deal about telling people about Jesus? This line is the reason. Ever wonder why churches like Westside put an emphasis on planting and growing churches all over the planet? This line is the reason. Disciple the nations. Disciple. That's kind of a weird word. Not one we use a lot. Disciple. What's that mean, to disciple someone? We got to know that word disciple is a word that captures a very Jewish practice. See, disciples were those who followed a rabbi wherever he would go with the goal of learning everything that rabbi knew. Sometimes we think of rabbi's disciples as his students. Sometimes we'll call them that. To be honest, that's probably not a great word. That's an English word, right? Students. Because our educational context brings to mind, when we say students, you think of rows of kids sitting at desks in rows, and the teacher is standing in front of them, and we talk about a little math, a little reading, a little history. At 3:30, they are released, right? That is very different from what we're talking about in the Jewish educational system. Comparatively, it's far more holistic with a disciple to a rabbi. If you were a disciple, you followed your rabbi wherever he went 24/7 because you wanted to walk and talk like your rabbi. You wanted to think and feel like your rabbi. You wanted to understand the law of Moses that God gave to Moses on that mountainside years and years ago. You wanted to understand that law of Moses just like your rabbi did. You wanted to eat and sleep, even defecate like your rabbi. I know that sounds crass. I'm not trying to be silly here. But, rabbis had prayers that they would pray whenever they would relieve themselves, thanking God for everything working properly and this mysteriously brilliant body that gets rid of stuff it doesn't need. And so, yeah, if you were a disciple, you wanted to pray every prayer your rabbi prayed because you wanted to live the way your rabbi lived through this world. You wanted to be shaped by your rabbi. Now, when Jesus says, disciple the nations, he's obviously, I hope it's obvious, that he's not saying, go and make disciples of yourselves, right? You need to go and become a rabbi, or maybe in today's world, an influencer. Go find some followers who want to be like you, record some TikTok videos, tell them everything you think you know about life, and shape people into your image, shape people into people who live and look and do whatever like you, right? No, that's not what he's talking about. It's pretty clear. Jesus means make disciples of himself. Go make more Jesus disciples. Because he explains, discipling means baptizing and teaching, right? Baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. That is, into the relationship with the triune God that Jesus taught his disciples about. The God that Jesus actually revealed to his disciples through his life. Yes, that does actually mean convert people from the worship of lesser gods into worship of this God. Like baptize them, initiate them into the family of those who believe and worship the true God for their sakes and for God's sake. Baptizing them, teaching them to obey, he says, all my commandments. The language here is striking because no other rabbi spoke like this. Other rabbis pointed to Moses, right, of the past. Like they pointed to the commandments that came directly from God to Moses on that mountain. And now here, Jesus is standing on a mountain telling his disciples to not just keep his commands, but teach others to keep my commandments. Just like a good Jewish, faithful Jew is going to pore over the law of Moses and strictly adhere to, strictly keep all of the commandments in the law of Moses, Jesus says, keep my commandments and teach the whole planet to keep my commandments. I mean, either this guy is like wildly egotistical, or he really does have the words of life. I mean, can you imagine if our world right now is falling apart? Can you imagine if every tribe, every group, every family, every marriage took Jesus' commands seriously, kept his commands? He says things like, don't exact revenge on those who have hurt you, but you love your enemies. You pray for those who persecute you. You treat your enemies well. He says, don't say I promise or I swear I'm telling you the truth. Don't say stuff like that, as if you don't say something like that people can't trust you. No, he says simply be a person of your word. Just make sure your yes means yes and your no means no. Don't try to serve both God and money. It doesn't work. Don't worry about tomorrow. It doesn't do you any good. Don't give expecting to get. It doesn't actually get you what you want. Don't be unforgiving toward other people, lest God be unforgiving toward you. Instead, forgive as you wish to be forgiven. Treat others as you wish to be treated. Actually, no, better than that, he says. Treat others as I have treated you. Serve others as I have served you. Love others as I have loved you. Lead by serving. Live by dying. Win by losing your life and handing it over to me. Don't do righteous things in order to get applause from people. Externally virtue signaling for the masses. You let others play that game. You aim for the inward righteousness of the heart, that part of your life that only God sees. You live for his applause above everything else. Seek first his kingdom. Seek first his righteousness above everything else. You choose the narrow gate. Choose the difficult road. Choose that narrow road that no one else is on, because that's what my road looks like. Heads up, you will have enemies. He says, you will be hated by everyone because of me, but don't you be afraid of those who can kill your body but not your soul. Instead, you take up your cross, you take up your crucifixion, and follow me through self-denial, through suffering, through death into real life, because that's what I'm offering you. Because I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life. So follow me closely and I will show you. Chip, do you really believe? Really believe that if everyone on the planet, all nations and tribes, if everyone followed that single solitary human being, Jesus, that if everyone aimed their lives at him, kept his commands, voluntarily gave their whole lives to him, that all would be right in this world? That all tribal disputes would disappear? That all criticisms would cease, that everyone would be at peace with each other? Do you really believe that? Yeah, I sure do. And I'm even willing to bet my whole life on this, that he is the only way, this wrong world will ever be made right. And I bet I'm not alone in that. I know I'm not alone because that is what this church believes. That's what we double down on that. We believe that Jesus is it. And so our mission, unapologetically, is to connect everyone to him. And we never want to hold our convictions about Jesus arrogantly. I wish I didn't have to say that. I feel like I got to say that. We never want to hold them arrogantly or with any sense of superiority over others or with a sense that we've arrived at the truth and therefore we have nothing else to learn. No. I mean, that would be far from the truth. Nor do we ever want to try to communicate our convictions to people without tact, without a willingness to listen to other views, even learn from other truth claims. Communicate our convictions without an awareness of our perspectival limitations, as if our view of Jesus is flawless, infallible, absolute. It's not. Our view of truth never is. But man, we do believe Jesus is it. We believe that he is flawless, that he is infallible, that he is absolute and true. And so our mission is unapologetically to connect everyone on this planet to him for their sakes and for the sake of our God, who deeply desires for this world and all of the people in it to be made right. There's a lot of ways to end a gospel. John, that's the fourth gospel, he ends with a word about all the stories about Jesus that he could have put in, that he could have included in his book. Luke and Mark, the second and third, they end their gospels with a word about the disciples. Matthew is actually the only gospel who gives the mic over to Jesus for the last word. And Jesus closes, not with a command, though his last command just a second ago, that is certainly within view. And he doesn't close with a promise about the future, though what he's about to say is certainly portable into the future. Jesus closes with a word of comfort. Here, a word of comfort here in the ever-present now. A word of assurance given to a young church scared to death on the precipice of a new phase of history. Jesus told them, I am with you always. Literally, I am with you all days, all your days, to the very end of the age. I don't mean to creep you out, but we really do believe he is here with us now, among us, with us, shaping everyone who's willing to follow him and be shaped into his likeness. And from your seat, or maybe from the empty seat nearby, he is looking out and seeing a world of people who are being unshaped, deformed by enemy forces that do not have people's best interests in mind. And when you go into that world and connect people to him, he is with